So why do I say that New York hates the homeless and its own people?
Now, this comes in various forms, but it's all designed to keep away people who are homeless. But is it an acceptable solution?
Until MassDOT installed these spikes mid-December, a homeless deterrent some call inhumane.
The goal was to prevent homeless from sleeping under this bridge, and so MassDOT installed metal spikes right up there. Instead, it backlashed with outrage from the town.
From armrests in the middle of benches to large rocks added underneath bridges, homeless advocates call these designs hostile architecture or anti-homeless.
Spikes that would hurt people seems like a bad idea.
Of course, everybody wants to move the homeless, but they gotta be somewhere, don't they?
Armrests splitting every inch, spikes lining ledges. It's like the city itself is saying, "Get lost." This, my friends, is the not-so-subtle world of hostile architecture. The city we love is riddled with design choices, aimed at pushing homeless people out, but guess what? It impacts everyone. Public spaces should be havens, not battlegrounds. They should welcome tired feet, be it a pregnant woman needing a rest or someone simply wanting to enjoy the fresh air. Instead, New York is creating an atmosphere that pushes people away, making even basic tasks like waiting for a train feel like an endurance test, literally. Like at Moynihan Train Hall, finding a seat is like finding a unicorn. You could say it's mystical. You can't even squat down quickly to look in your bag. Security might think you're start to settling in for a long stay. I mean homeless style. It's downright ridiculous. It's like there's some hidden fitness test you have to pass just to catch your train. Correct me if I'm wrong. But do public facilities exist to make people comfortable? I mean, like helping vulnerable people, such as pregnant women, people with disabilities, and many more. Aren't public facilities exist to make people's lives easier? Yet, here we are, with a city actively discouraging us from using them. This hostile architecture trend screams a clear message. New York City, it seems, has a problem with its own people, not just the homeless. Hostile architecture isn't exactly a new invention. It's been around since the 19th century in Europe. Originally meant for a pretty simple reason, stopping people from relieving themselves in building corners. Back then, public restrooms were scarce, if they even existed. And forget about in-home toilets. There's no such things like toilet. People usually do their businesses in a hole or bucket. So, desperate folks who walk in the middle of the city used any nook and cranny they could find, with building corners being prime targets. Fast forward to today, and public restrooms are readily available. Logically, hostile architecture shouldn't be necessary anymore, right? Wrong. In modern-day New York, the city seems more focused on making the homeless population disappear than actually helping them. New York City actually has a staggering homeless problem. With over 8 million residents, roughly 1 in every 83 finds themselves without a home. That's over 100,000 people. This issue has landed New York the unfortunate title of having the highest homeless population in the entire US. Instead of tackling the root cause, the city has opted for an approach many see as downright cruel, hostile architecture. This strategy might make the homeless invisible, but it comes at a cost, sacrificing the comfort of everyday New Yorkers. Yes, it's true. Most homeless New Yorkers find refuge in the city's vast shelter system, disappearing from plain sight. But here's the rub. This system isn't foolproof. Beds run dry during harsh winters when the homeless population swells. And let's not forget, many homeless individuals grapple with mental illness or addiction. Shelter rules don't always mesh with their realities, and shelters themselves might lack the resources to truly help. The result? People end up sleeping outside shelters, a number estimated around 4,000. So, what's the city's answer? Not building more shelters to accommodate these folks. Instead, they've opted for the bizarre strategy of hostile architecture. Essentially pushing out 4,000 people and making life uncomfortable for millions of regular New Yorkers in the process. Seriously, is this the best solution they can come up with? It's like treating a symptom instead of the disease. Hostile architecture hides the problem, not solves it. New York City needs a more humane and effective approach to address its homeless crisis. Perhaps we could consider solutions like adding shelters or more spacious accommodations for those with special needs. What do you think? Do you also find this trend of hostile architecture uncomfortable? Imagine a city adding spikes to benches, not for some medieval torture device, but to stop homeless people from sleeping. This is the dark side of hostile architecture. Design features aimed at pushing certain people out of public spaces, or maybe everyone. Now, don't get me wrong, but hostile architecture, despite its restrictive nature, does offer some benefits. Take, for instance, those special decorations tucked into the corners of buildings, designed to deter public urination. Or consider the ubiquitous streetlights we see illuminating our cities at night. They're a form of hostile architecture too. In the past, when streets were shrouded in darkness, it provided cover for criminals. But with the advent of streetlights, the night became safer, encouraging more activity and bolstering economic growth, while thwarting criminal endeavors. It's a clever application of hostile architecture, wouldn't you agree? But nowadays, the proliferation of hostile architecture in our cities is hard to ignore, especially when it comes to deterring homeless individuals from finding a place to rest. Common resting spots for them are outfitted with sharp spikes or uncomfortable seating, making it clear they're not welcome. It's as if being homeless is treated as a crime. Many in society, and even those in authority, look down on them, often forgetting that homelessness is a symptom of systemic issues rather than a moral failing. Take a stroll through New York City, and you'll see what I mean. Look at those weird, uncomfortable chairs with armrests in all the wrong places. They're not meant for comfort, but to stop homeless people from lying down. They're meant to keep the homeless away. But in a country where nearly half of the population is considered plus-sized, how practical are these designs? These uncomfortable bench are a nightmare for anyone who's a bit bigger. And don't get me started on the leaning bars, a so-called solution that denies even the basic comfort of sitting. It's as if sitting has become a luxury reserved only for the privileged, disregarding the needs of vulnerable groups like pregnant women or the elderly. The Department of Housing and Urban Development estimates it would take $20 billion to end homelessness in the United States. Now, that might sound like a hefty sum, but let's put it into perspective. In 2019 alone, the US government spent a staggering $718 billion on its military. And if we're talking about foreign aid, consider that Israel alone received over $300 billion since 1946. Instead of spending money on hostile architecture, or funding wars on the other side of the world, battles that aren't even ours to fight, why not invest in solutions? We could easily afford to help our own people if we set our priorities right. The question isn't, can we afford it? It's, do we want to create a city that welcomes everyone, not just those who can afford a comfortable seat? So, when it comes to ending homelessness, it's not a matter of resources, it's a matter of priorities. Do they want to do it, or don't they? And if not, why not? Let's discuss in the comments section. Until next time, peace.
This is what I saw when I was driving around the city January 1st, 2022. Children out here, there are no toilets. You don't see this in New York.